All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to this month's DB2 Tools Community Update webcast. Before I hand you off to Andy and the team, just a couple of things from me. First, a few questions along the way, and we always hope that you do, either questions or feedback. Please use the questions box along the right-hand side of your screen, right under the GoToWebinar control panel to ask those questions. Andy and the guys do have spots in their presentation for questions. So we'll pause it at each of those points. And if there's questions, we'll ask them. If not, we'll keep moving. Secondly, we are recording today's session. That's why your lines are all muted. If you would, I'll probably get the replay out in the community later today. Worst case, it'll be tomorrow. So if you have someone you want to share it with, please feel free to point them there. The last thing for me is that we want to make sure these sessions are valuable for you. So with that in mind, a short survey is going to pop up at the end. If you could give the team some feedback on today's webcast, I know I would appreciate it, and I know they would too. That's it for me, so take it away, Andy.
Thanks, Len. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I hope you have had a good weekend and that you are all staying safe and healthy. A quick disclaimer, this is a presentation and we may at some point talk about future plans, and as a company, we do reserve the right to change those plans at any time at our discretion. So just so noted there. My name is Andrew Badgley. I'm the lead product owner for the DB2 Tools here at Broadcom Software Group. And between myself and Jakob, Rava, and Srinivas, we manage and guide all the development for the products. Today, we're going to be talking about some general DB2 Tools enhancements that have been made. Also talking about a couple things for Sysphere for DB2. Oops, I forgot to change that title there. I'm a little embarrassed here. That should be admin, not MRI for DB2. I'm sorry, Srini. That's what I get for not forwarding this out beforehand. I'll fix that, Len, before I send out the copy for attachment to the recording.
Sounds good, Andy.
Okay, so sorry about that. If at any time, please provide feedback. We are always interested in your feedback, either during this call or even afterwards. Please, make a note of our email addresses, and please feel free to reach out to us. Starting off with general DB2 Tools topics, we have just recently released level set 20.0.04. The PTF number is LU05995. It was made available on May 31st. It is a nice sync point. Our level sets that we're using they're nice sync points between, for bug fixes and new functionality. And our product panels and reports do take advantage of the additional maintenance level in the version string, so that it's nice to see also from a level, a level 1 support when you call in to get support help. It helps them to know, when you have a level set applied, that they know that if you're at level set 20.0.03, for example, that you have all the maintenance prior to that, and it just helps them out and makes it an easier starting point for knowing where you're at. With 20.0.04, there is no activation required. 20.0.03 had some new functionality that required activation. 04 does not. Any features that are available as part of 04 are available without activation. You can just start applying the maintenance and start using it. For a full list of the new functionality, we do refer you to our community post that we had on May 31st regarding that. And if you are interested in doing activation of 0.3 or 0.1, because it also had activation functionality, we do have a YouTube video to help you with that first activation. Make sure that you got all the pieces in place for it. Okay, one of the things that we've introduced as part of level set 04 is day 1 support for DB213. DB213 went GA on May 31st, and that is no coincidence, about the same date as 0.4. 0.4 is our day 1 support level set for DB213. You do not have to put in a new release. You just apply your level set maintenance on your existing 20.0 release, and you are good to go. If you want more details on the steps necessary, please check out the blog post written by Chris Crone and myself. Okay, Thread Terminator as part of DB213, the DSMAX ZPARM upper limit was increased from 200,000 to 400,000, and Thread Terminator's been updated to allow you to make changes and modify your DSMAX value up to that new limit on a DB213 system. Here's a screenshot example of the maximum open data sets value, and you can see that it is currently set at 400,000 on our system. Just for the screenshot, I did reset it back to what it was previously, but I wanted to get a screenshot showing you that it's changeable. So here you go. That's what changed in Thread Terminator and is part of the exploitation for DB213. Additionally, our DB2 command processor, more commonly known as maybe DB2C command, we have updated the set log command in here to support the new DB213 remove log parameter that was added. This parameter allows, IBM added, and it allows you to remove active logs from the Bootstrap dataset without taking an outage of your DB2. So you can use the set log command through DB2C if you want to do that. That is the general DB2 Tools, value pack update. Does anybody have any feedback for me at this point?
I don't see any questions or feedback in the questions box at this point.
Okay, well, with that then, Rabah, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Andy. So my name is Rabah Bigar. I'm the product owner for SysView for DB2, and I have two items to present to you today. This is the first one, import and export of exception definitions in JSON format. This was a customer request that we heard from some of you who reached out asking to enhance the support we have to the batch utility so that users can handle the exception definitions using the batch utility. Originally, or as we had it before, the batch utility was only supporting some basic restarting of the exception system. So we have enhanced that, and customers can now export, edit, and import the exception definitions in a JSON format that's humanly readable. There are a number of benefits to this. First one is to simplify and enhance management of exception definitions. The second one is to speed up exception setup on the new systems by importing the exception definitions from existing data collectors to the new ones. And the third one is to easily create a backup of your exception definitions. The backup will be in a JSON format, and this can be done with the export function. Next slide, please. So what we did, or what's new, we introduced a new JSON format for the exception definitions. We added a couple of commands to the batch user interface. So we have the export command, the import or Reinit commands, as well as the check commands, and we will dig into each one of these in the next slides. The first one is the exporting exception. So on the left side, you see a sample job to do the export. The IO batch utility program is invoked here or executed. The request equal export and the command equal xmgr are the functions used here. And the exception name was used to specify a set of exceptions. So it was the test exception and then start or present a wildcard. So you can export a set. So you can export all the exception definitions. You can as well export a subset of them using, for example, the star here as a wildcard. The output is what you see on the right side. What you notice here is the JSON that contain the different fields of the exception definition as you would have seen otherwise on the UI. You see the name, for example, inside the red rectangle highlighted as the test XP4. You see the type being subsystem, whether the exception definition is active or no, as well as some identification data. And then you have subsequent subsections that would highlight the other values that the exception definition have. And the next slide will show us the Reinit The Reinit is basically a way of importing, with the exception that everything that's located in the data collector will be erased. So the original or the dataset you are importing into will be cleared out, and only the exceptions that you are importing with Reinit will be left in it here. So as you can see on the right side in the screenshot, the only 4 exceptions that are there are the ones that were imported with the Reinit function. It's important to note that for the exceptions definitions to be active, the data collector need to be restarted. Next slide, please. Because typically we want the import to be as smooth as possible, we added a check command to allow users to check whether their JSON file is valid, whether it contains any errors that can be fixed beforehand, so that the import can proceed. So for example, we detect if you are trying to import an exception definition twice, or if some of the values in the JSON file contain non-accepted values. You see the command being, the request being checked for this in the UI utility, as you can see in the sample job. And on the different rectangles, you see the different errors. So for example, the JSON syntax error counter at line 24, column 19. So we try to add as much details to the error messages here to make them helpful during debugging. And you see that, for example, invalid time format, time value in format hour minutes is expected, and it should be between values to 0 to 23. So some details to help debug the errors. This is available as per the error type and what errors was encountered. And if everything was good, you will see that the check was successful, as you see in the last line on the last screenshot. Next slide, please. So once you have done your export, you have done your edits, you check that the JSON file is contain correct values and you are not using any duplicate names, then you can do an import. In the import, you basically import what you have in the JSON file and add it to the current collection of exception definitions you have in the data collector. Again, for these definitions to be active, you need to restart your data collector. You can, however, immediately browse the changes in the exception system online to see what changed or what exception definitions you have added. So the main difference between the import function and the Reinit function is that the Reinit is going to erase what exists in the data collector, whereas the import is just going to add to it. There is a sample job available with the PDF that you can access, and the flow we expect is first you should create a backup of your exception definition in case anything can go wrong during the edit, or later on if you want to do a rollback. That's easily doable and is in the sample job as well. Then you can do an import first, or I think there's a typo here, so you should do the export, and that's basically the backup that you have already created if you want, or you can create another export for a subset of the exception definitions. Once you finish your edit, you should do a check, import the exception definitions, and do a restart so that they take effect in the data collector. And I think with that's all I had for this. This is available through the level set PTF LU05995. And a reminder is that there is a prereq PTF for the exception names that need to be installed. We did a demo of it, I think, in one of the previous community calls, so a recording of that should be available in the communities, where we introduced exception names for every exception. Every exception gets a name value to simplify basically the identification and maintenance. Otherwise, it won't be possible to do the export and the edits later on in the JSON format. And any questions so far?
Yeah, actually, there is one question. I'm not sure exactly when this came in, but I think it was once you started. Is there any requirement to take several DB2 tables and create a JSON definition, or even one table?
I don't have an answer to that. Let me, take a look, find out, get back to you on it. Lan, if you can, maybe.
Yes, I'll make sure that you get that. Yeah, I'll make sure you get all the information you need.
All right, thank you.
So, Robbie, you mentioned the prereq. I will note that the level set includes all the prereqs. So, you get the level set, you're going to have all the prereq stuff that you need for the feature.
Perfect. Another reason why to use the level set PTFs.
Exactly.
Right. And what we are discussing here is the exception definitions, export and import in a JSON format. So I'm not sure about the DB2 tables, and I'll need to double check and get back to you on that question.
Great.
So the next item then, any other questions?
No, there is one comment. Great news about the exceptions definitions on JSON.
Awesome. Glad you like it. Feel free to reach out with any feedback you might have after you start using it. We are open to improve this further. Yep. And the next item is an update that we have for CCV4DB2 support. We continue to add support for new functionalities in DB2 that IBM introduces and expose new fields to CCV4DB2 so users can, better tune and monitor different functionalities. In here, I have a set of functionalities to go through. The first one is the support for physically closed datasets fields. Many concurrently open datasets by DB2 utilities could trigger the DSMAX limit and impact performance of other applications. There was an enhancement to DB212 in the process of closing datasets accessed only by utilities. So we added support for the new fields to IFCID2 and IFCID 1002 to count datasets that are physically closed by DB2. We also updated the different relevant reports, whether that's batch reports, online reports, and exception systems. This is available through PTF LU04374. The next slide, please. In the next slide, we added support for secondary roles in IFCID 269. DB2 code has been changed to support secondary roles when external security profile is defined to switch users in a trusted connection. So we added the support for the new fields that contain data about this scenario to IFCID 269 and updated relevant reports as well. There are specifically two here that have been updated, the BTR ECTRC and the REC trace as well. Next slide, please. So we also added support for new RDS source and DB2 ZAI fields through PTF LU04803. And the idea was to add support to the new tracing system parameter connection type. This parameter specifies whether the connection group field is static or dynamic for DDF and KIX connections. There are two valid values, original and current. And the new parameter ensures consistent values or consistent results when you use the connection group in an AQL where close. Relevant reports have been updated, so that include batch reports online and as well as making changes to the exception system. Next slide. In here, it was the support for connection type stability. All right, I think I kind of messed it up with the previous one. So this is the one, yeah, thank you. So for the DB2 ZI fields, yeah, sorry, this was where we added support to help user better monitor and tune performance of RDS sort processing. The CSV for DB2 added the support for a couple of fields in IFCID 2, IFCID 148, IFCID 3, as well as IFCID 1002. This should help the users better monitor and tune performance of RDS sort processing, and we have updated the relevant report for that. Next slide, please. And this was the one that I was speaking about right now. I kind of mixed up the slides in my notes. The CSV for DB2 here added support for the connection type. Both valid values are original and current as stated, and update relevant reports here were updated as well. This should help to bring consistency in the results when you use the connection group in an AQL workflows. Next slide, please. The support for stealable page count in the ADM statement cache pool was introduced with LU 05687 to help the users in monitoring the dynamic statement cache. We added support for the stealable pages in the ADM statement cache pool in IFCID 1002 and IFCID 1047 in the trace records, and updated the relevant reports. There is a large list of those online, batch, and history. 2 exception fields were mapped as well and added to the exception system, and a new default exception was created that uses the keys available field. Next slide, please. There's support for new lock and CPU time fields that should help the users in monitoring fails and retries of conditional lock and CPU times consumed on the accelerator. This involved adding support for sections Q8ST and section QI-ST of accounting statistics field 2 and 1002. A number of reports were updated as a result as well. You can see the list of reports available here. And next slide, that should sum it up. There are different PDFs mentioned with each slide, but to make things simple, you can just install the level set PDF LU05995 in addition to LU06188 that was published afterward to take advantage of all the mentioned functionalities. Is there any questions, Len?
I don't see any questions, so I think we can keep going.
Thank you. Srini, take it away, please.
Thank you. Okay, hi all, this is Srinivas Adupa, and you could call me as Srini, and I have totally 3 enhancements that I would like to talk about as part of today. The first one is RC query, which has been enhanced to support DB2 13, changed tables, in terms of the changed data types. So as you know that the RTS tables of for DB2 are being enhanced with small int to integer and integer to begin for some of the RTS tables. And now that with this particular enhancements, in order to support day 1 support, RC query has been enhanced to support all the changed data types in the table space and index reports that are primarily targeted for the changed data types that are to be in line with DB2 13. For more information, below are the list of the DB2 column names for which the data types are being enhanced, and the benefit and the benefits of this one is that query will display the longer data with the new values for all the DB2 13 subsystems without having any sort of negative impact for DB2 12 and lower subsystems. In the next slide, I have provided you a couple of screenshots primarily targeted for TSRT and IRT. The first one is TSRT, where you could see the reorg inserts and reorg deletes are the columns that are currently displaying a kind of big int data typed value for both of those two columns. And for the IRT, I could display only the reorg inserts for, I mean, just for the sake of this particular screenshot though, but then that's also going to support all the, other changed data types as well. This is the first enhancement. And if we could go on to the next screen, yeah. So LU05995 is the PDF that need to be installed in order to have this functionality running. Any questions, please? Suggestions?
No questions so far, Srini.
Thank you. So the second one, RC migrator, RC update, and RC compare to support DB2 M508's enhancement. And that's been released with the same PTF number, and the enhancements that we have made is to generate alter table space move table move table statement, and this is primarily targeted for when you are moving a table from multi-table table spaces to PBGs. And it also generates the appropriate online reorg statements. And the only condition is that the newly created PBG, which might have been created by the user, or if the user is expecting the product to create that, yes, of course, even that's also is the added functionality. And the PBG need to meet all the prerequisite conditions as per DB2. And the benefits of this one is that minimizing the outage to almost zero, just because we are going to remove the functionality of drop and create just by generating the alter table space move table statement along with the online reorg statement, and supports for multiple tables at a time. So in a way, like in case if you wanted to move multiple tables from one multi-table table space to multiple PBG table spaces, that's also being supported over here. And then ultimately we are still going to get one online reorg statement only, just because the source list of table spaces is only one. And of course, in case if we have multiple table spaces in the source, then we will be getting that that many number of online reorg statements. And the benefits of this one, minimizing the outage to almost zero, and it's going to support multiple tables at a time and ability to create PBGs on the fly. In the next slide, I have provided a sample screenshot that it's been generated by the product. You could see in the first half of the screen, you could see the alter table space move table statement for one of the table, where you are moving that particular table from multi-table table space to a PBG. And then just below that, you could also see the online reorg table space statement that it's been generated, just to make sure that the table space is filling DB2's requirement. So next slide, please. So, and again, this is also being delivered with the same PTF number. Any feedback, please?
I don't see any questions or feedback.
Thank you. And the final one is the DB2 DevOps. We have delivered a new Zowe DBM-DB2 CLI plugin. And in the next slide, you could see, this particular new plugin is currently available for download from the public repository, and the download link is hyperlinked to DBM-DB2 CLI plugin. That's where the colored, text that you're able to see that. But then, once you get that PPT, you could see the link, that is hyperlinked with this. And this particular plugin requires the level set PDF, which is the same PDF number that I was talking just before as well. And it requires the configuration of DBM data service too, in order to use this CLI plugins. And the benefits of this one is that integrate DB2 for ZOS schema and data provisioning, that I'm going to talk about them in detail slightly later, and the ability to generate DDL for one or more DB2 objects and perform the syntax check for the provided DDL and reports the errors, if any, and also deploy the DDL by comparing a DDL with the target DB2 subsystem and also with the ability to apply changes. And the final one is that migrating a DB2 object, including both DDL and data from one environment, which is just nothing but one DB2 subsystem to another DB2 subsystem. This will also be covered as part of IDUG North America, so please feel free to join there as well. In the next slide. Okay, so here are the list of 8 DBM-DB2 CLIs that we have introduced as part of this. And the first one is that generate DDL CLI. So when you have installed Zowe and DBM-DB2 things, right? The first thing is that once you have installed that plugin, you could generate the DDL for one or more DB2 objects, and that I've just provided a simple screenshot in the next screen as well that I'll be talking about it slightly later. And the functionality is that you could generate the DDL for one or more DB2 objects. You could also check the syntax of the provided DDL, which is the second enhancement for that. And the CLI in order to use that one is the check DDL. And the third DDL is that third CLI is that deploy DDL. That's primarily used for comparing the provided DDL with the DB2 catalog and making the changes, as necessary in the target DB2 subsystem, which is already in catalog. And the next one is that the compare DDL, where you are going to provide a DDL for comparing that DDL with the DB2 catalog object, and then just generate the report without making any sort of changes. But then, that itself is going to give you all the changes that are required to make sure that the DB2 catalog, is needed to be made, in order to look like the provided DDL. And then the other one is that in case, what if I wanted to execute that script which has been provided by the compare DDL CLI? That's the next one which is going to be used, and the CLI is execute compare script. So that particular CLI is going to execute the compare script generated by the compare DDL CLI. And another one is that in case, what if I have a simple batch processor script, that could be of the compare script, or it could be of some kind of other DB2 commands, or some kind of other batch processor commands. What if you just wanted to execute all of them in one single shot? We have just provided a kind of another CLI for that as well, and that CLI is execute script. That is primarily targeted for executing any batch processor script, or the script which contains any batch processor statements, by the way. And the final list of enhancement is that the prepare migration and execute migration script, both of them are primarily targeted for generating the script for migrating one or more DB2 objects from one DB2 subsystem to another DB2 subsystem, which is currently being done by prepare migration CLI. And that CLI is going to give you the output script to be executed with the execute migration script, which is the final one, right? So if we could go into the next page. So this is a sample screenshot that I was that it's been provided for you. You could see in the second line of this, the screenshot, you could see the Zowe DBM generate DDL. The user is trying to generate the DDL for a table space. That's the object type, by the way, and the table space name is dbm-db.dbmts. and also just by including a table, which just means to say that as a user, I am expecting the plugin or the generate DDL to generate the DDL for this particular table space, but also include the appropriate table DDL within the same output. That's the main request that we're going to make to the DB2. And the source subsystem that we are going to make use of it is DP11 in this screenshot. And the output is also going to be saved in the myddl.sql, which is the output file. And it has several other parameters. So that's the only screenshot that it's been provided for the time being. But then again, the same screenshot, it is currently missing the DDL for the create table statement, just because the create table statement is again having a kind of good amount of size in terms of size, but then in reality, you are going to get the DDL for the table as well, the create table as well, just because we have requested for that. So next slide, please. So this is the second sample where we are going to ask the CLI to check the syntax of a provided DDL, which is technically the DDL that was being generated by the generate DDL CLI just before. I was just trying to play with it, and then if the syntax is perfectly correct, and then which in other words, if there are no syntactical errors that are being identified by the check DDL, then the user is not going to get any errors as such. You could see the line number 3 output, the check DDL completed successfully and no errors found. We just mean to say that, okay, this DDL could be, clearly executed. And in case if the DDL is having any errors, then that output will also be generated into other file, which is called as error.out, as a kind of another output file that is going to be generated, as the output for, from this particular CLI. So next slide, please. So this is another, the same link that I'm planning to provide. And then this is the link, from where we can download that package. That's pretty much I have for today. But yeah, in case if you want to have any sort of one-on-one kind of discussions, we can go through each and every CLI in detail. And also please join for IDUG North America, where we are also going to talk about these things in detail in that. Any feedback, please?
No questions or feedback.
Thank
So
you.
while we're waiting to see if any additional feedback comes in, Srini, I'd like to also mention and encourage, we do have a workshop available around our plugin and our DevOps experience that we're providing through the plugin CLIs. That workshop can be on a individual basis. We also have a planned workshop if you're going to be at IDUG North America. Please join us for our workshop there on Thursday. Also, Srini, you listed here, the package link to download the CLI, which is great. Also, you will need the level set, 0.4 level set as well, maintenance installed on your system, and the DBM data service needs to be configured and running on your environment as well, because that is where the REST APIs live and run that support the CLI here. So those are the 3 components that are needed for the CLI and to be functional. And as your users take advantage of these and start playing with them, we would very much be interested in your feedback and recommendations on future CLIs that we can deliver for you. Okay, Len, is any feedback coming at all?
Sorry about that, I was on mute. A question just came in. General question about DB2 tools, DB2 function levels, and function supported. Is there some sort of matrix or documentation that maps all the DB2 function levels and features, V12 and V13, that are unsupported, tolerated, planned for support, fully supported by each DB2 tools maintenance level?
We do not currently have an externally available matrix that outlines that information. We do make sure that we have day one support for every DB2 function level when it comes out. And as we have started doing level sets, we will make sure to list which level sets provide that day one support as well. But that day one support doesn't necessarily list the full exploitation of that level set, as much as making sure that you can run with the maintenance being applied. So if you would have specific details, we do try to build our exploitation based on customer feedback and what items are of significant interest to you. An example would be the M508 support that Srinivasa's team just delivered and talked about. That was highly encouraged and desirable by customers, so we made sure that exploitation is available there. But if you have specific exploitation of a function level that you would like to see supported, or that you are aware of that's coming out in a future release, that because of your involvement with IBM directly, you would like to see supported and exploited, please reach out to us. Any one of the product owners, we would be very interested in having that conversation with you. It helps us build our roadmap to deliver the value that you need from our products.
Thanks, Andy. That's the only question I see in the queue, so I guess we can keep moving.
So in closing, thank you everyone for joining us. We do really appreciate your attendance and participation in these calls. Our next community call is scheduled for August 8th. We are not planning a call in July. Our call timing would align with IDEG North America, so we will be skipping our July call, and we'll talk to you again in this forum on August 8th. If you missed our last call, which was in March, we skipped a couple of months as we were working on the stuff we talked about today, but there is a replay available for our March call if you're interested in that. That talks about level set 03 and the things that were provided there. We also run a validation program. I've talked about it. I tend to talk about it at the end of each of these calls. If you would like to have insights and participation and conversation around the things that we're planning to develop instead of this forum where we get to talk about and share the things that we have done, if you want to be part of the conversation to determine the direction of the future of the tools, please join us in our validation project. Our next call is coming up next week. So now is a great opportunity to join and participate and be ready for that call. Education is part of Broadcom. Education is, a no-cost item for all of our customers. So please take advantage of our education opportunities and courses. Here are a couple of recent ones that have been added, as well as the 4 digital badges that we have available with our tool set. There's a nice new call out on Detector. It's not new anymore. It's been out for several months. It's been out since last March. So, but there's all that availability. And with that, thank you everyone for your attendance and participation. We hope you all found this valuable. We definitely appreciate being able to share this information with you. Have a great week and a great afternoon.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again.